My name is Barbara Mulvihill, and today I'm talking with Errol Redden. Today's date is April 19th, 2018, and we're in the Campbell Room of Kansas History of the Salina Public Library. Errol is a member of our community. Mr. Redden, could you please state your full name?
My full name is Errol Douglas Redden.
And what branch of the service were you in?
I was in the Army.
And what was the highest rank you attained?
I became an E5, which is sergeant.
What war or conflict did you serve in?
I served in the Vietnam conflict or war.
Tell us about what happened around the time that you entered the service.
Tell about the times that was going on around the time I got in the service.
How did you enter the service?
Well, I'd say I graduated from high school in 1961, and I farmed for a while, and married in 1964, and that marriage didn't work out, and we had a child. And the minute I was divorced, or we were divorced, I became eligible for the draft. And they were drafting a lot of men at that time, and that's when the Vietnam War became much more engaged. And they were sending troops over there, and so I was drafted in. I flew to Kansas City, took a physical, came home, and then I went back again and was inducted. Then I flew to Fort Bliss, Texas, to start basic training, and they were full. Too many were there for the basic training, so I was moved from there to Fort Campbell, Kentucky by airplane. And I took my basic training there, and while I was there, my grandfather died back in Kansas, so I traveled back on a bus and went to his funeral, and then I returned to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and I finished basic training probably around the last week of May. And then they went by bus down through Memphis, Tennessee, down to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and that was what they called Advanced Individual Training, AIT, and it was focused upon the Vietnam War. And we were given M16s there. First basic training was M14. We trained on the M16 at Fort Polk. And that lasted until July of that year, 67. And then I had the opportunity to come home for 2 weeks, and then I was shipped to Vietnam. I flew out of Wichita to Salt Lake City to San Francisco. Then I boarded a C-141 military plane and flew to Wake Island, and then stayed there for a while, and then refueled, and then I landed at Binh Hoa in Vietnam, which is north of Saigon, about, I would say, 25 miles, something like that. And that's when it started. I remember yet when they opened the door on the airplane, it smelled like jungle right away. It was a bad smell, and it was hot. And it was high humidity in it too.
How did you feel about being drafted and having to go?
Well, personally, I would have not wanted to go. My own personal feelings, I didn't want to go, but because of the risk of getting killed, everybody has that fear. But I decided I wasn't going to be a draft dodger, and I wasn't going to be a coward. I decided do what I was supposed to do, and that's what I chose. And it was very. Think about all the men that were killed over there, and there's some women too. But I don't know. Today you look back at it, you wonder why. Yeah.
You landed at Binh Hoa.
I ended at Binh Hoa, and then you get me started on this thing. I was supposed to go to a company-sized unit, and I got to thinking, well, really what got my attention was another lieutenant come in there, and he said, we're organizing these LRPs, long-range reconnaissance patrols, and he wanted to know if we would all volunteer for it, and I said, sounds good to me. So that's what I did. I volunteered for it. And so I look back, I've been through the Vietnam DVDs that was PBS put out, and I'm sure glad I did do that, because we would go out and try to be as quiet as we possibly can and look at what the enemy's doing, maybe set some ambushes up, And those other guys in the line companies would just walk through the jungle and search and destroy. And the Viet Cong knew they were coming. They were making a lot of noise. So I'm happy that I chose to go there. And at first I went from Long Binh, the 90th replacement. It was a unit in the Army that run the replacement soldiers that came in there. And they shipped me down to Cat Lai when I got in with the Lurps. And Cat Lai is east of Saigon, about maybe 20 miles. So I was there from the last of July till probably the last part, middle part of November. And I took, in between times, for 2 weeks in September, I took training at Nha Trang with the 5th Special Forces to be a Lurp. And it was a rigorous training. I mean, it was some of the hardest thing I ever did in my life. And so I got with the Cat Lai thing. And we went out on some patrols down there. We had some firefights, killed some people. None of our guys got hurt up until the 16th, or middle part of October. And we had a team go out one night and killed everyone except one. And it's in that book right there that I brought. It tells about that story. And it kind of shook me up when I saw that happen. And I still to this day don't understand how it happened or what happened. But I hope to next week, which I'm going to go see some of my friends and buddies I had in Vietnam down in Louisiana. And I may learn some of these things. I hope I do.
You were a part of the 199th.
I was with the LRP unit, Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol. They just abbreviated LRRP, and it was part of the 199th Light Infantry Brigade. Now, a brigade is about 4,000 people, and they had a military base near Long Binh, which was near a city called Dong Ha, and that was the main base for the 199th. Now, as I read the book, I understand that we were there to guard the headquarters of, like, where Westmoreland was at. We were supposed to guard Saigon around that area there. And that was our typical challenges, was to keep the VC from coming in there and really messing up that place. So that was our duty there. Mm-hmm.
But your particular, the LRP, they went out into the jungle. Yeah,
in different teams. Now we go out. I may go out maybe 1 week and then the rest of the week come back and go out again, but they would take us in a helicopter and fly us up in the air, and if we'd fly over and look over the LZs that we were going to drop into, and then we'd go back to base camp, load up all our gear, and the day we chose to go out, we'd head out, and the helicopter would land in the LZ, and we'd just jump out real quick, and he'd take off, and we were there, see. It was that fast.
And an LZ is what?
A landing zone.
Landing zone.
Right. See, over in Vietnam, there was a lot of jungle, but then there would be clearings. I don't know why they were there, but there were clearings in there that you could land. But you had to choose where you're going to land and then where you were going to try to go and check it out. And that's what I did.
And every time you went out in the jungle, did you have a specific mission or goal?
Yes, there was a mission and goal to find out what is going on in the area. And several times I dropped off and we encountered people. They didn't see us, but we saw them, and we did. If they were bigger than us, we didn't engage them. But we call in sometimes. We call in fighter planes that would strafe the area around us, and they drop napalm. I've had that happen once for sure. When I first got there, we were known as the green. We was really green. We didn't understand what was going on. We had these guys that were there for a year almost, and they would take us out and show us the things we needed to watch and do, that was important, I thought. And in fact, the first firefight I got into, and we killed one guy, was with them guys. They showed us how to watch things. We had starlight scopes that we could watch, and at night, you couldn't see with your naked eye, but you would take a starlight scope and see people out there. And that was beneficial to us. But like I say, then I went to the training at Nha Trang, and we went on a mission while we were there up in the mountains. It was the coldest. It was the coldest I ever was in my life. I think it got down to 45 degrees, and I didn't have on any clothes on, and I shivered all night. it was quite a deal. But the next morning the sun came up over the horizon and got hot, so it didn't last forever.
But the weather over there was generally pretty hot.
It is hot all the time, and they had dry season like maybe 4 or 5 months. Then they had the monsoon, and it would just rain every day. You just constantly wet. And they had leeches that crawl up on your. Well, if you walk through a stream, they'd get on your pants. I scraped them off, and they actually was able to suck blood through my pants. But then there's this other little leech, it's sort of like an inchworm, and he'd sit down and you just see him coming towards you because they seek your heat that's in your body. Yeah, but we had mosquito repellent. We'd pour it on the leeches.
Oh, yeah. When you encountered, was it both Viet Cong and North Vietnamese?
Yes, it was. I have a picture of a fellow over there that was from Minnesota, and he got shot in the stomach. I saw it happen, and it was an NVA. I mean, they were coming down the trail. And we got into this firefight with it, and my team leader and him were standing 10 feet apart, and he shot a 45 at him and didn't knock him down. And that guy jumped into the bushes and alerted his friends there, and I think 4 or 5 AK-47s opened up full automatic. I was up in a tree trying to find out our location on a map, and the bullets were just flying underneath me, and one of them hit him in the stomach and just knocked him down. His crack, he was on the ground. He later died. But, yeah, we engaged the NVA and Viet Cong, yeah.
How big of groups did you encounter?
Well, I'll tell you, I was hoping that maybe I'd survived that, because if there had been a company there, we'd have probably been wiped out, because there's 12 of us. We was in a double team that day. But we didn't, they just opened up and fired, and then they just disappeared in the jungle. I don't know where they went. But I've seen 200 of them come by us one time. Yeah, and an unusual thing, they told us that if you landed in an LZ and you heard them shoot 3 shots in the air, they were alerting everybody in the area that we were there. And I had that happen one time. Yeah. But we survived that. That's when we had to call in the airplanes to strafe around us and drop napalm. Yeah.
When you would go out and you would encounter the enemy, how did that feel?
Well, it was kind of calm and nice when you're out walking, but when you encounter the enemy, your heartbeat just goes out the ceiling. It just really goes high. But I also found one of the worst feelings is back at base camp, thinking about the next time you're going to go out. And that's just anxiety. It's just playing on your nerves. But you'd hear people come by and say, "Boy, it's really bad out there, in this certain area," and then we was going to be going there. Yeah, but of all things, I never that I knew of got shot at when we landed in an LZ. Never. I don't know why, but the bullets, when they come over your head, they crack and they snap like they're breaking the sound barrier. That's what makes the noise.
Did you usually go out with the same fellows over and over?
It varied. It varied some.
Were there people you got close?
Yeah, you got close to them, yeah. But yeah, most of the time you try to keep the same ones. You have a point man, a guy that's up front watching what's going up front. Main thing is security all around. You got to watch the guy behind. He has to watch somebody then coming upon you from behind. If they see you and then let you go by and then they come up behind you, you'd have to watch out for that.
Did in the groups you went out in, did different people have different roles to play?
Different roles? Well, we had a man with an M79 grenade launcher, and he'd shoot these little grenades. And we always carried hand grenades with us. And of course, the M16 was a weapon that, the main weapon that we had over there. But one guy, he liked the shotgun. I know he had a double-aught buck in it, and he liked the shotgun. So, but anyway, as far as roles is concerned, the main thing was to just be alert and secure, so you can keep everything secure.
Did you have was there one person who was a radio operator?
Yeah, we had radios. We had radios with us, and they'd carry about 20 miles. because they were FM radios, and they didn't carry like an AM radio. But they had a lot of channels on them. You know, you could dial up, I think, 960 channels on that PR-25. And we had codes that we go by. You know, we would say a certain name like Foxtrot or something like that. It might mean something to the people we're talking to, but the enemy wouldn't know what that meant. We had codes we go by. And I learned one thing, that like at night, if you're going to read a map, if you had a flashlight that had a little bitty hole in it and you'd shine it on that map, you could see it. But if you let that big light flash on it, you know, with a regular flashlight, it would just dissipate out there and they'd see it. And that's why we tried to not, you know, not make ourselves known as much as possible. Mm.
So would the radio operator mostly call in when you encounter the enemy?
Well, we would do that. That would be an emergency. But most of the time on the hour, you would click, you know, you would somehow you would run a clicking sound to let them know that you were okay, you know. But yeah, we didn't travel at night. I mean, some people say that they did, but I never did ever travel at night. But you know, the jungle over there in daytime, it's just the birds and the insects and everything is just, you know, like chirpy, 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 you know, as everything just going. But at night, it just goes down to really quiet. You can hear a twig break over there somewhere, you know, just snap. You know, it might be a deer or something, stepped on something. Yeah, that's one thing I learned about jungle.
Uh-huh. You said you had told me earlier that you were a farmer most of your life.
Yes.
Were you had you farmed before you?
Yes, I did. I'd farmed before.
Did that help you?
Yeah. I think farming would have trained me to be conservative about things. Don't take too many chances. You know, you don't have to. But I met a lot of good guys over there, and I'm looking to see them here in about another week. And some of them passed on, but anyway, yeah, I think the farming it helped me a lot.
Is this the first time you will have met with the guys?
Yes. Well, no, I should say no. I went to Branson last year, but I only met one that I knew. This thing, I think I'm going to see maybe 8 or 10. So we can have more of a conversation as to what went on.
Yeah.
And some of these guys got their perspective of the situations, and I have mine, you know. But between both of us, or whatever we got there, we can kind of figure out what happened, you know. Mm-hmm. Like with Ronnie Hammerstrom from Minnesota that I saw get shot in the stomach. I had my perspective because I was up in a tree. I was looking down at my team leader. He had a 45. The Viet Cong come around the corner. Had an AK-47 over the back of his neck. And my team leader had to drop on him. You know, he had the 45. He pulled it out of his holster up here on his chest. And that Viet Cong would have had to flip that thing out, you know, and get ready to shoot it. But somehow he got away. I don't know what he did.
Wow. Ronnie that got shot in the stomach, is he the only person in your unit you saw get shot, or were
Yeah, he's the only one I saw get hit and wounded and die. But actually, when I came back from Vietnam, I went up to see their family. I said, I wrote to him and told him what happened, you know. And there was like, he had 2 sisters and parents. And I wrote to him and told him what happened. And they had I really wanted to go up there and meet them, you know, so I did. And with my parents, I went up there, and they had a Sunday dinner for me and brought over a bunch of relatives. And it was a nice afternoon, I tell you. But it was, you know, it's sad that they lost their son, and he was exactly about the same age as I was. Yeah.
Well, now you told me that you were in Vietnam from July of 67 to July of 68.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And that during that time, it was the Tet Offensive.
Yeah, the Tet Offensive took place January the 31st of 1968. We had no idea. Well, people were thinking that something was going to happen, but they didn't realize what scale it was going to be upon. And I was back at base camp when the Tet started at about midnight I think it was about midnight when it struck. And they finally come in and got our ammo dump, some sappers, and they blew it up, and it was just a big mushroom cloud went up, and it was one heck of a shockwave come through where we were at. And I remember that. I remember the bullets just popping and cracking over our heads. And the jet fighters were flying around our base, just strafing, just the whole thing. And it was just a lot of noise. Yeah.
Well, did that make a difference in things when you went out into the jungle? Was it different?
You mean after the Tet Offensive? Mm-hmm. I think they got hit hard. As I remember reading or looking at the PBS, they lost like 50,000 killed out of 80,000 they'd sent down there. And around where I was at, around Long Binh, there's thousands of them were killed in that area. And I think they got themselves their nose bloodied in that deal. So no, I didn't notice not any difference. It was just the same kind of cat and mouse thing we did with our LRPs.
What would you say, or could you describe your worst day in Vietnam and your best day in Vietnam?
Well, the worst day I'd say was losing Ron. I became very good friends with him before he died in December. Of all things, he died on Pearl Harbor Day of 1967. That's why I remember the day. That was one of the worst days, I think. But the walking through the mud and sleeping in the rain and just miserable stuff. That was some of the hardest stuff that you had to endure, and you finally get used to it after a while, till you get home, and then you're still not used to it. Yeah.
What would you say your best day was over there?
Going R&R. I went to Hong Kong.
You did?
Yeah.
What'd you do?
And I happened to meet up with somebody there I didn't know at all. And he took me on. He was real friendly, and he showed me around lots of Hong Kong. And then there was another couple there. They were missionaries, and they took me in too. And I went down and got a steam bath. And I wasn't accustomed to that thing. It was so hot in there, I was just about ready to croak. And I appreciated what they'd done for me, but it really opened up my skin and pores. And if I was dirty, it shouldn't have been dirty after that. It should be pretty clean. But what else did I do at Hong Kong? Oh yeah, the first thing I did, I got in the bathtub, and I filled up, cleared to the top, and just sat there for hours. And that was one of the first things I wanted to do. And it was, and when we got on the plane at Tan Son Nhut, which is down by Saigon, these stewardesses, they had these white towels, and they had them just primed ready for us to put around our necks and everything else. And I thought that was that was some good time there. Yeah.
Sounds nice.
But coming back, he had to get back in it again. And that happened about in March. Is when I went on R&R, and of all things, Lyndon Baines Johnson, I saw him on TV in Hong Kong, and he said, "I will not seek nor will I accept the nomination for President of the United States." My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe that he was saying that. But I didn't know the political thing that was going on in the country, and I wasn't too interested in it. But today, I'm very interested in what happened back then, because in high school, I didn't like history, but boy, I encourage young people to look at history. It's important. Yeah. And another thing I experienced that I didn't like very well was when Martin Luther King was killed in April, and I was out on a patrol one day, and we had a Southern guy with us, and he he was happy that he had been shot. You know, and you run into them kind of people. You know, I didn't like that. That was a bad thing. But
well, I understand you earned a couple of medals in Vietnam. Could you tell us what they were and what you earned them for?
Yes, I understand that. I didn't realize at the time, but I received the Bronze Star medal, and then I also received the Army Commendation Medal. And I really appreciated to get that for, apparently it was because I became a team leader. I became E5. I got E5, I can't remember what day it was, is it in less than halfway through my tour duty. And I appreciated it that they gave me those medals. I think I earned them. And then I received that certificate from the 5th Special Forces of going through the Recondo School.
Right. What was that like, going through the Recondo?
It was very physical. It was very taxing. I mean, it just got to you. And we had to rappel out of a helicopter. It was 120 feet in the air for practice, you know. And then first out we started on like a 50-foot tower. And that wasn't so hard, you know, just down you go, and it didn't look very bad. But when you got up at 120 feet, it was a long way down to the ground. And then we ran 2 miles the first day, and we just keep increasing. And the final run was 7 miles. And we had to carry a 30-pound sandbag on our back and carry a rifle. And they taxed you down, you know, they made it hard on you. And there we learned about how to sort of be a medic. They trained us a little bit about that stuff. I wasn't a full medic, but and then of all things, one of my John Turk from Chicago was in our unit, and he was up there with me at Recondo School. And there's a little dog walking around where we were at, and he was just a little thing. And he started petting that dog, and I was happened to be sitting right beside him, and we were taking a break. And I that dog looked kind of sick, so I didn't touch him, but he had rabies. So John Turk had to stay back for a week and take rabies shots, or 10 days. And then he came down back to Cat Lie, and then just 3 weeks later he was killed in that group that got killed. 5 out of 6. Yeah. That was another thing that happened. And then got my certificate of that I completed the school. Yeah.
Do you think, or I'm guessing it really helped you in...
Oh, it did. It did. It gets your mind going that you can do things that you probably think you can't do, but you can do them. Yeah. I think Westmoreland pretty much set up that program. I think there were 3,000 men went through that program. But they were saying that the North Vietnamese didn't like the Lurps because they were doing the same thing they were doing. We were guerrilla soldiers, you know. We would small groups, and they didn't like that. So I think that's probably one of the reasons. I don't know how I fell into it, but I did. Yeah.
I didn't ask you. You said the helicopters would drop you down into the down to the ground, and then how long would you stay, and then how did you get out again?
Well, we stayed about a week, and we had to. That's why we was out trying to look where our location was, and we had to navigate to another LZ's where you could come in and pick us up. And so we would try to stay on track, you know, to get there. And most of the time in the jungle, that some of them said it was really tight and you couldn't get through it. I've seen that happen about once or twice. But most of the time, the jungle where we were at, we could get through it without, you know, just having to take and hack it up and with a knife or some kind of something to chop it up with. And then we would, I don't know how much we could make in a day, maybe a quarter of a mile, maybe something like that, depending on the jungle. But we want to take it kind of slow and see what's going on, listen. And then when we get to this LZ, we would call in and they'd come out there and pick us up. And sometimes it'd be like 5 days, maybe 7 days. We had food out there. We had what they called a ration, a freeze-dried ration. And it was called chili con carne and chicken stew and beef stew. My favorite was the chicken stew. And we would take the dynamite is one thing, but we had what they call C4, which is composition 4. It's white and it's kind of like a dough. We'd put it down in a little hole and light a match to it. It'd start giving off a lot of heat. We'd heat our water up and then pour it into the sack and then stir it up and eat it. Oh, that was good.
Really?
It was. I really appreciated that. Yeah. Better than sea rations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell us what it was like when you left Vietnam.
Well, I left from Ton Sa Nut, which was the airport down by Saigon. And the plane came in. It was, I can't tell you what size. It was a jet. But put on my good clothes, my good soldier, not fatigued, dressed up. And we got on the airplane and we flew to Japan. And we stayed there for a few hours. It was dark when we got there. But I can remember when we was leaving Ton Sa Nut and looking down at the jungle, and saying, well, they called it the freedom bird. Ever hear that term? Yeah, we call it the freedom bird. But anyway, we got to look at the jungle one last time, landed in Japan, and it was dark, and we waited there for a while, apparently to fuel up. Then we flew to Anchorage, Alaska, and it was July, and it was like a kind of a cool spring day there in Anchorage. And so waited there again, and then we flew down to Travis Air Force Base, which is in close to San Francisco. Yeah, and then from there I went down to Los Angeles. I had an uncle there, and I was going to look him up, but it didn't work out. So then I flew to Amarillo, Texas, and landed there. And then I flew to Wichita. And when I came into Wichita, there was a thunderstorm going on, and this airplane was just like flying, shaking back and forth there. I thought, I'm not going to make it, But he brought the thing down and landed, and everything was over with, so it was pretty nice. Yeah.
How did you feel leaving Vietnam?
Well, I felt good. I didn't want to stay in there any more than I had to. Yeah. Of course, when I left there's probably 30,000 men had been killed, or maybe 35. So there was more to be killed, that were killed after that. It lasted from, our engagement was from like 1960 to 1971, I think, something like that. So there was more work to be done over there, I guess. And yeah, I wanted to get home.
Did you miss your buddies that you left?
I missed them, that's why I'm glad that this thing's going to take place next week. Oh, it is. It's really going to be fantastic.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And I got this one, Robert Tate. I don't know, I showed you a picture of him there. He is all fired up. And he's a nice guy. I really like Robert Tate. Well, then I learned about another fellow. His name Bob Sampson. And he was in our unit. And he came back to the United States. And then he went back to Vietnam again. And he got hit in the leg with a bullet or something. And they tried to save his leg, but they couldn't. And so they had to go through, I think, 13 operations. Now he got an artificial leg. So I'm going to be able to see him too. He's going to be there too.
Good.
So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
After you came home, was it an adjustment, and did you have any after effects from it?
I'd say for the first month I had very high, fear of something happened to you. You just can't get over it for a while. Yeah. In fact, I have PTSD right now, and I'll be laying in bed and I'll just the other day I hit my wife with my elbow just as hard as I could in her stomach, and I just realized how bad it having, I don't know, we're going to have to sleep in different beds or something, but I was having one of them crazy things hit me in my brain. And that ain't the only incident. There's been other ones too. But
is it that you're thinking that you're back there, or what's it like when that?
yeah, you're back there, but you're thinking of the incidents that happened. You know, like where Hammerstrom gets shot,
Okay.
and then you're thinking about that firefight where we killed one person down South Saigon, and those things. You know, they just you react to them, and it's just something that's part of your body. You know, it just happens.
If you had to sum up your experience about Vietnam, what you went through, and your life since, how would you sum it up?
Well, I'd sum it up like there was a lot of anti-war protests going on in this country, and at one time before I went over, I thought the country was going to come apart because there were fires burning in towns, riots going on, and I thought that you know, this country, I don't know whether it was going to make it or not, you know, for a while, but it seemed like it, you know, it come out of it, you know, after so much going on, and so I think some people say we didn't get our recognition when we come back, you know, from fighting the thing, because it wasn't actually a war. It was actually some people call it a police action because it wasn't declared. It's what the President of the United States did. And sometimes I wonder, you know, if Kennedy was, you know, he was shot in 1963, and whether, you know, if he would have still lived, whether he would have said, no, we're not going to go on down the road with this stuff, where Lyndon Baines Johnson picked it up and run with the ball, you know, and he kept it going. And then Nixon, he said he was going to close it down fast, you know, but he didn't. And you wonder about politicians, you know, they're kind of like comedians, you know, they're like, they backtrack and say funny stuff. But anyway, I just grieve over the fact that so many lives are lost. You know, like the Vietnamese lost millions, and we lost 58,000. And I grieve over the fact that people are dying. You know, well, what's the reason? You know, it's like we're down here. I'm not president of the United States, so what can I say? I can't choose to do this or do that. You know, except somebody gives you orders to do it, which I did. But it was an exciting experience. I mean, the helicopter rides were just breathless almost. You know, they'd come in, we'd be hot and sweaty and just miserable, you know, dirty, just completely dirty, felt dirty. And then he'd get in that thing and he'd just take off and go up there, and as it went up, it got colder and colder and cooler. And that was a pleasant thing to do, to get picked up. Yeah.
On behalf of our community, and I thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
You know, and I appreciate you doing this story. You know, it will help people in the future to understand what happened in Vietnam, and from somebody who really experienced it.
Yeah.
So.